Okay, the waiting room is open and I've disabled it, so everyone else will just be able to come right in.
All right, thank you for that. Could you advance to the next slide, please? So I know that there are those of you who are still joining and connecting. I see a couple connection to audio, but just wanted to say welcome and good morning. Welcome to our last HVAC meeting of 2024. Definitely not the last one for this fiscal year, but the last one for this actual calendar year. So good to see all of you. I received kind of several messages from a couple of people who were saying they may not be here today, a couple who may be coming in and out, just because of all the other kind of year-end activities that I know are happening in people's lives and are happening also with work. So know that there's a lot of things to balance towards the tail end of the year. So very happy for those of you who are able to be here with us. So just wanted to give you a couple minutes to get settled in. We know people are probably transitioning from either other meetings, or if you had any kiddo drop-offs this morning, probably from doing that. So just giving people a couple minutes to settle in. It's 9:03. We'll kick off at 9:05. Just again, take this time to get up, stretch, do whatever you need to do to kind of get yourself prepared for our meeting. And then also just want to mention, as we make our way through the meeting today, there'll be several points where we'll have some breaks, but please feel free to take care of yourself however you need to. That could mean being off camera, that could mean coming on and off of camera, that could mean getting up to stretch. So whatever you need to do while we're together, please feel free to do that. So we'll get our meeting officially kicked off here at 9:05. So just take a couple of minutes and we'll get started here soon. And we are recording, as you noticed when we came in, as we do for most of our HVAC meetings. So again, just wanted to let you know that that is happening as well. All right, it is 9:05. We'll go ahead and get started. And as I mentioned, we may have some of our members who join us as we make our way through our time together. But again, thank you to those who were able to join today. And we will go ahead and get started. So I wanted to start off, next slide, please. So if you have not done this already, um, put your organization and role name, organization and role in the chat. And on your little Zoom square, please make sure that you either put behind your name that you're an HVAC member, that you're a guest, a DCY staff, or TRIO member, so that we know. And for any breakouts or anything else that we need to do, we can make sure that people are where they need to be. So I'll give you a minute or two to do that. And again, if you are not aware of how to change your name, please let us know and we can guide you through that. So we'll give you just a minute or two to get that taken care of. And Adrian, I see your chat. Thank you so much for letting us know.
Thank you.
right, I see the names populating into the chat. Thank you. And I see people are working on getting their names changed within their Zoom square, so thank you for that as well. All right, I think for the most part, everybody knows everybody, but you never know. So I just want to give people an opportunity to know who's in the space and in the room with them. Next slide, please. So again, you should have received a packet yesterday, gave you the agenda and some materials to go over. So and wanted to go over our agenda here really quick. So we started off, as we talked about at our last meeting, our meetings will now run from 9 to 12:30, and then we'll have a half an hour lunch. And then we'll have, excuse me, data subcommittee in the afternoon. So today we're going to spend some time this morning just kind of getting to know each other, doing some welcome as we do for most of our meetings. We'll transition into a legislative update. So we are happy to have Mary and have Erica here to support us through that conversation. We'll get an opportunity also to do an update to our HVSA fund balance. So we'll do that, and then we'll have a chance to take a break. And then after that, we'll have a rates evaluation update where we will have our division director in DCYF, Vicki Ibarra, joining us to kind of talk us through some rates updates there, the evaluation update for rates. And then we'll have some other updates as we kind of make our way through. So we'll do an update on the procurements and our expansion as well as 6109. We'll also do a rates update. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the HVAC chair, co-chair. So that's how we're going to spend our time this morning. Hopefully you got that agenda yesterday, but also talking through it right now. So just give you a moment to look at that, and then we'll transition. Okay. Next slide, please. All right, so it's a time in our meeting for us to just spend a little bit of time getting to know each other and just sharing and building some community. So I always struggle with like having one question that has one part, because I start to do that and then I'm like, oh, it'd be so cool to do this, and oh, that connects to these things. So my question is never like one in and of itself. It always has multiple kind of pieces and options to it. So we are going to spend a little bit of time in small groups. I think it works sometimes to have people pair together to do this. So I will put this into the chat as well. So just in your small group, and we'll have the rooms open up here, just thinking about 2024, what is one thing that you're happy to be leaving in this year in a couple of weeks when 2024 officially ends? What is one thing that you are proud to have accomplished in this year? And what is one thing you're hoping to carry with you into 2025? And it just all sounds so weird to be saying that, like we're wrapping up 2024, because it doesn't seem, I don't know, it flew by. I don't know about anybody else, but it seems to have flown by. I feel like I blinked and now we're towards the tail end of the year. So again, just one thing you're hoping to leave in this year, one thing you're proud that you accomplished, and then one thing you're hoping to carry with you into 2025. So I'm going to take a moment here and put that into the chat. And Emily, if you could open the rooms, that would be great.
Yes, and do you want 5 minutes, less, or much time?
Let's do 6. As I'm looking at time, we're a little ahead of schedule, which is not bad.
Okay, so we will do 6 minutes, and then you guys will have a 30-second timer before the breakout rooms actually close. So it'll let you know before it whisks you away.
And then Emily, do you happen to have the PowerPoint ready? Could you drop into the chat? My lovely VPN is doing something here.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Just dropped that prompt into the chat.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got a little bit wrong. One thing you're happy to leave in 2024, not hope to leave. Okay, I will open those breakout rooms now.
So let us know if you don't see the prompt to join or can't join. And we'll help support you through that too.
You should have seen a prompt at the bottom of your screen to join. But if you, did you see one more?
Emily, I had a prompt and I joined and then it kicked me back here.
Oh.
Oh, okay. So at the bottom of your Zoom window, do you see the like the bar that has the option to turn your video off or on, and then the chat? Is there either 3 dots or do you see 4 squares that say breakout rooms?
Join breakout room. Join one. Okay, I'll try again.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, there she goes. All right. Jessica, do you want to pause recording? All right. Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully that was enough time to make it through 3 questions. It's always hard to gauge with, sorry, I thought I was on camera. There we go. It's always had to gauge with Zoom kind of rooms, how much is too much, how much is not enough time. So hopefully you were able to spend some time making your way through those 3 questions. I'm wondering if there are any brave souls willing to share. And either of those questions. No, not having to hear from each one, but anybody willing to share any kind of their response to any of those questions?
I can share. Our group was pretty unanimous, Adrienne and Kathy and I, on just the weight of the last quarter or so, maybe year for some, has just been just that. A lot of just heaviness and uncertainty and worry and strain and stress that not only comes down from the leadership, but it's felt at the staffing levels of just not knowing. Not knowing is a little frightening, and so our hope is to be able to leave that behind and just try to look at this little sunshine guy here on the screen and imagine that is what we're walking into in 2025. Some of a lighter knowledge of where we're going, knowing we're in this together, and that we will survive the thick of it. A lot of proud accomplishments, even in the bump and grind. There's a lot of great things that happen. Going back to school, completing other large goals on top of trying to meet the demands of contracts and workload, but really trying to be better stewards of the work and better leaders by getting education and being stronger in better ways. And Adrienne is working really hard right now at trying to balance life, some of the self-inflicted weight and burden, but it's purposeful and meaningful in the end. And carrying that forward, between Kathy, Adrienne, and myself, we felt like the common theme is hope. Hope drives us and guides us in this work, in this field. And it also is something that we can also give to those that we lead and serve, and the families. We give hope that we are in it together. We're not doing it alone. And that everybody's got a piece in the sustainability and the energy and efforts to do good things into this this next chapter that we're going into with open eyes and open arms and ready to embrace that. So that was kind of our space this morning. So thank you for that opportunity. It was helpful.
Maria, thank you so much for sharing. So appreciate it. As you were talking, I could see people nodding and emojis also. There's what you shared and what you've said resonates with so many people on this call. I know that we are, again, headed into some places of uncertainty, but just like you mentioned, I think there's, a lot of things that unifies us. And I think one of them is just families, kids and families, and making sure people have what they need and access to what they should have access to and support when they need support. And so that, thank you so much. So eloquently put and so nicely kind of capturing, I think, what a lot of people are carrying into 2025 and are hoping to leave in 2024. I wanted to give an opportunity if there's anybody else who wanted to share. We are a little bit ahead of schedule, which is very unusual for HVAC too. So it's taken us getting to the end of the year to be able to do that, but we are ahead of schedule, which I don't think I feel like I often say in our meetings.
Hi, Nellie. This is Gretchen Toller. Sorry, I am late. I missed what everybody was saying, so I apologize. But I just wanted to say, Gretchen Toller, Thurston County, and one thing, happy to be leaving 2024. Unfortunately, we lost a couple family members in 2024, so that was really hard. Being accomplished in 2024, I think surviving 2024. The other, I would say one thing for work though, that was a big accomplishment for us was we were able to get some local funds to hire a community health worker that's bilingual, and that has been critical for us. It's been just absolutely amazing. So so that's a big win. Thanks.
Thanks, Gretchen. And loss is hard. Loss is very hard. So wishing you and your family members comfort as you move into the years when loved ones are no longer with you. Anybody else wanting to share? Right. We were going to start with our legislative update, but I do not see Erica with us yet. Is that accurate? Yeah, I don't see her on. So we are not scheduled for them to be on the agenda until 10:45. So
I think
Renee, I'm
she's
wondering.
supposed to
Good.
join around 9:30. Nellie,
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure.
All right, so we've got about 5 minutes before Erica joins on. So that's probably not enough time to move into another agenda item. So what we may do is, why don't we just take a break here for a little bit? Because I would hate to jump into another agenda item and not be able to complete it and have Erica join on. So it's 9:26. Let's take about a 3-minute break and let's see if Erica joins us at 9:30. If not, then we may move into a smaller update. How about we do that? Okay. So I know it's a little early to be taking a break, but we're just gonna roll with it for this meeting. Short break, so back at 9:30. Okay. Thank you. Everyone, it is 9:30 and I don't see Erica quite yet. So I'm wondering if it may be a good use of our time just to move to one of our shorter updates and we can transition. So Renee, I wonder if we can talk a little bit about expansion. So, and then when Erica joins, we can transition over to our legislative update.
So are there slides for me, or 'cause I didn't create them, so I could just do a rundown, but I wasn't sure.
There weren't slides, but I did send
Okay.
out the communication you sent out to LIA.
Oh, there's Erica.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing, Erica.
Morning.
Good morning. All right, so we are going to transition into our legislative update. So I'm going to hand this over to Erica and Mary. And Erica and Mary, if you just want to spend a little bit of time introducing yourselves before you launch into your slides, that'd be great. Thank you. I'm going to hand this off.
Awesome. Hi, I am Mary Sprudy Garland with DCYF. I am a senior policy advisor with our government affairs team. I work closely with the home visiting team here on a lot of our work interfacing with the legislature.
And I'm Erica Halleck, and I'm the director of sorry, I'm so excited to get a little break. I don't remember what my title is. I am the director of policy for Start Early Washington. I have the pleasure of working with Mary, and I apparently just have sugar plums dancing in my head. So thank you. It's lovely to be here, and thank you for being patient with me. I was just on the phone with the budget staffer from the Senate. So I apologize for being late. Thank you for your patience with me. And we're excited. Well, I don't know, excited's the right word, but Mary and I are happy to be here to talk to you about Washington State's budget situation. So we'll be tag teaming it this morning. So I think we can go to the next. Do you want me to kick this one, Mary?
Yeah, why don't you lead the next few slides and then I'll chime in where needed.
Perfect. So I'm going to age myself. I know that I could be Mary's mother. So those of you that remember my favorite show, The Brady Bunch, you'll remember the theme, Marsha, Marsha, Marsha. That was the theme of a lot of my youth. The theme of 2025 is going to certainly be the budget. And we know that. We're going to talk a little bit about that here today. So we know that we face a very large budget gap in our state. It is projected over the 4-year to be anywhere from 10 to 12, and now we're even hearing up to $14 billion. And we put on here as a frame of reference that our 25-27 biennial budget is projected to be around $71.5 billion. So it's a rather substantial budget gap that our budget writers will have to fill in. One that we haven't seen since the Great Recession of 2008. And I will just note personally, as I've been reflecting and talking with colleagues, unlike 2008, and I think we all were alive in 2008 and lived through that, we all felt it, right? We saw banking institutions collapse, the housing market, we saw friends and family directly impacted financially. And certainly we know costs are up. We see it at the grocery store. I know, my Christmas is more expensive this year, et cetera. It is not, I think the regular public will be surprised by our state's budget discussions. And Mary, I welcome you to add here.
No, yeah, I just think, the situations that kind of led us here are nuanced. We've made really, really smart investments. And then also, as we know, just the cost of doing regular business has increased. I think you all are seeing that in your programs as well. And so I think the state's kind of contending with a much more expensive kind of maintenance level budget and just keeping the programs running that we already have running.
I think we can go to the next slide. So this is just a little bit more background here. So as a reminder, our state is required to have a balanced 4-year budget. While that is nuanced, it makes it a little trickier for our budget writers to be extra creative. This is a new rule since our state's last recession. So the last time we were in a budget challenge, they did some sneaky math like, delay the start of the next fiscal year by a day to save money. Again, because of this 4-year balanced budget requirement, it makes them be more disciplined, and it is definitely more challenging. We know that our revenues have been down, so I would say they've been rather flat. We do have about $1 billion less in revenue over the 4-year, and while we get monthly updates on what our revenue collections at, it hasn't been a big sweeping drop like we saw at the start of COVID. But we are seeing lower retail sales tax, and business and occupation tax collections are down. So while our state we have had probably for the last 5 years, our state's revenues have exceeded projections. That hasn't been the case to quote, make up for it of late. And again, Mary, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
No, you covered it.
All right. Go to the next slide. And I'll just say, as Mary noted and did a great job of doing so, the real issue is that our state's expenditures and commitments are rising. And again, as Mary noted, you're seeing that in your own programs, in your own agencies and organizations, just as in your own homes. So there are various items that are driving these increased state costs. For example, state collective bargaining agreements that were negotiated over the summer months and early fall. So it's not just state employees. We have collective bargaining agreements with family childcare, adult family homes, the ferry operators, et cetera. So that's creating about nearly $3 billion again in the 4 years. So that's a pretty substantial cost that is awaiting lawmakers. Interestingly, about collective bargaining agreements, they have to be assessed for feasibility, and then they must go to the legislature for either an up or a down vote. Those are I can say this as a non-state employee, these are very political, and they are typically accepted. It has, my knowledge, it has been a very long time, decades perhaps, that a collective bargaining agreement has not been adopted by the legislature. So we will see how these advance this year. Additionally, we have a number of state laws that are on the books that are slated to come online July 1, 2025, which is, of course, the start of the next biennium. And if you're reading newspaper articles about our state situation, you will see the Fair Start for Kids Act referenced quite a bit. And there's a lot around childcare that very exciting growth options that are in place that also have big cost drivers. So on the books was to increase income eligibility for Working Connections childcare, increase the reimbursement for Working Connections providers, as well as we had on the books ECAP entitlement in the next biennium as well. So there was quite a bit of costs associated with that. Additionally, COVID funding that I know is still been hanging around in some areas is I would say finally concluding and impacting some areas. So I'm not meaning to pick on K-12, but there were some districts that used temporary money to hire staff, and now they're coming to the legislature to seek that ongoing funding. So it is interesting looking at that state expenditure and those commitments, because that is impacting the state budget situation. And Mary, again, add anything?
No, you're doing excellent. Nothing to add.
I'm about to kick it over to you to handle.
Okay.
Want to do the next slide? Oh, the resource slide.
So these are just some resources that we have included to explain the state's kind of budget situation, budget landscape. The Washington State Standard is a resource. It's a free resource that you can sign up for. It kind of emails you daily. They've created a really good, I think there's a couple additional ones that they've created recently, Erica, that actually aren't on this slide, but we can put them in the
I'll
chat.
put one in the chat. There was one on
Yeah.
Monday. It was great. I'll do
Right.
it.
Yeah. So they've created a lot of user-friendly kind of information around where our state funding is really going, what are the biggest cost drivers, and kind of how did we end up here. And so that's good resource to look at. Also, the Washington Research Council has created a couple resources too that you can look at if you're interested.
I should also toot Start Early's horn. We have notes from Olympia. I will put that in the chat as well, that link, and you can sign up. We actually just did a budget analysis that went out yesterday, and we'll do a weekly roundup during the legislative session.
Go to the next slide. You want to take this, Erica?
I'll do this will be the last one I do. So the analogy here is the pie is only so big. And the question we're getting a lot, and the way that I'm framing things is what will happen if X doesn't get funded, because there just isn't enough money to fulfill the state's commitments. And budget writers and lawmakers are really grappling with competing priorities. It's hard, right? I mean, our state invests in very important priorities, right? It's behavioral health and housing and education and roads and Medicaid and prisons and higher education. So there are no easy, well, I would say few easy choices. So groups are being asked to prioritize and being asked to come to the table with a solution-oriented mindset. So coming and saying, absolutely, do not touch us isn't being met with isn't being met very receptively. So lawmakers who were here back in 2008, although I will say there are fewer and fewer of them given the amount of change we're seeing, they really want to avoid the massive cuts that they saw then. That it's, and those of you that were work then saw programs that were so decimated that it's taken so long to build back from it. Actually, personally can't let my mind go where I know I'm so concerned that we're going to slip back on. It took so long to rebuild. They're really wanting to avoid the harmful decisions that were made there. Just mentioning that our state agencies right around Veterans Day were given 1 week to respond to OFM to provide a potential cut list to inform the governor's budget. I will say the state agencies responded very differently to that assignment. I shared this earlier with folks. So for example, I am going to pick on the University of Washington. They submitted a short, I want to say 1 paragraph, 2 paragraph letter, just so y'all know they're very important. Everything they do is very important, they're a very important institution. Of course, they cannot cut anything because they're very important. And that was the extent of their letter. I would argue everything the state of Washington does is very important, including the work of DCYF, the Healthcare Authority, and others. Healthcare Authority submitted items that I think their tack they took, again, this is my opinion, was they submitted a list of items that I think will be found to be politically unsatisfying in the legislature. So they submitted things like maternal health, healthcare for children, healthcare for immigrants, things that I think the legislature will not find, be very open to. DCYF's list did not include anything related to home visiting. It was noting that their box of what they can recommend for cuts is more limited given statutory requirements and federal requirements, et cetera. I will say that whole cut list, there's a lot of energy put towards it, but now that we've moved on to the next step in the budget process, hopefully we won't pay as much attention to it. That information though is on the OFM website. So that was one step. And then DCYF can talk about this too. Actually, Mary, why don't I turn it over to you to talk about this part? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So also just like a couple notes on the budget reductions list, as Erica mentioned, those are all public, so you can look at those. Nothing in home visiting was included as in our potential cuts list. What we know now is actually the majority of items that we submitted as potential reductions were not taken by the governor. And so as Erica said, hoping we can kind of somewhat pivot away from that. And just want to reiterate, like nothing on DCOF's list we wanted to cut. All of those we believe are meaningful, worthy programs. We have staff that are invested in all of those. We know that they help our clients. And so really was a very hard discussion. And it's, if programs are on the list, it doesn't mean that we think that they're bad programs, that they're not providing any value. It was just a challenging time. So a few weeks ago, the governor issued a hiring, travel, and contracts freeze for state agencies. There are, meaning that we will not proceed with any additional hiring, cut back on travel, and not be signing additional contracts into place. There are exceptions to all of these if they are for, I forget the language, but like for the benefit of the public, which is like a pretty general statement. And so the department has an exceptions process in place in order to kind of decide where we will be doing any essential hiring, any essential contracts, or any essential travel. So just wanted to make you all aware of that. And I think there will be further discussion of some of those items later in the agenda. We can go to the next slide unless Erica, you have anything.
Nope.
So the governor released his final budget on Tuesday. He proposed a balanced budget. As Erica noted, we do four-year balanced budgets. His budget included both cuts, although I might categorize those as reductions, and increased revenue, mostly through the use of implementation of a wealth tax. So again, the governor's budget is a proposal. It is a first step in a very long process. Nothing that is included in the governor's budget is final. The legislature will use, typically how we think of it is that the legislature uses the governor's budget as a first draft, and then they kind of go from there in terms of how to make investments or future additional reductions. What the governor prioritized or kind of emphasized in his talking points was that he did not want to take the state backwards in terms of the meaningful investments we've made. He noted some of the cuts that were made in 2008, particularly around behavioral health, were hugely dismantling to that system and very challenging to build back from. And he did not want to, revisit those. So we proposed this is the state implement a wealth tax on really, really high income earners. The specifics of that, I'm sure, are available in resource. Again, that's not a tax that the state has levied. And so it's, I heard a dear friend the other day call it as monopoly money, in that it's not official yet. So this is all just kind of a proposal. I just want to include some of the highlights that were included in, again, this kind of first draft of a potential state budget, which was they did take savings from home visiting underspend that was specific to expansion efforts. There was $400K of that as taking in savings for fiscal year 25. They did not implement the DCOIF decision package for rate increases. There was also no continued funding provided for 6109 slots. That funding was, the department received funding through the opioid settlement account, and that was one-time funding. Additionally, some of the larger kind of pieces of savings in the governor's budget were around moving some early learning dates around from the Fair Start for Kids Act in terms of delaying expanding access to those programs. So we delayed ECAP entitlement from the 26 to 27 school year until the 2030-31 school year, and delayed Working Connections getting to 75% state median income until 2031. Erica, do you want to say more about any of these items?
You did an excellent job as always. I would note the reason I mentioned earlier, the four-year balanced budget requirement, that is the reason for the 2030-31 delay. It pushes it out of the 4-year. And I will say, holy cow, how are we already looking at 2030? So, yeah.
Yeah, so we will keep going to the next slide. What we also heard, the big news yesterday, was that they named a secretary for the agency. Since we have a new governor, the incoming governor is in the process of selecting kind of agency leadership. Representative Tana Sen was named secretary to DCOIF. She will start January 15th, I believe. Tona Sen was the previous chair of the House Human Services and Early Learning Committee and was one of our lead champions in the House. She also sits on appropriations, so she was able to kind of advocate for our budget request items in the fiscal committee on the House side. So the House will need not only to select a new member. The Mercer Island district that she represents will need to select a new member. The House will also need to select a new committee chair to fill her position. We're also anticipating not all agencies have appointments yet, so we're anticipating future agency appointments to be made, and those may impact the legislature in advance of session. Erica, what would you add to these things?
The only thing I would add is that Representative Sen was also the point on the House Appropriations Committee for early learning related items, which is where the budget writing happens.
I think that's our last slide. We can stop the screen share for now, and if we want to take any questions, Erica and I are happy to answer.
Oh, maybe one more thing. I think, Mary, too, my understanding is when Governor-elect Ferguson is sworn in, he has the potential to submit addenda, would that be the word? Addenda, if you will. He's indicated his top priority is $100 million for additional law enforcement at the local level. So we could see changes in various areas, but do not expect whole-scale changes.
And that's for the governor's budget. So
And
he'll
that's for the
submit
governor's
additional priorities that will then be included in the governor's budget. And then again, legislature uses that to kind of make their final decisions.
Oh, and one more thing, I think it's important, and as a reminder for myself too, that DCYF as a state agency, that their task is to follow the administration's budget. So they cannot advocate for things that are not included in the governor's budget. Is that accurate, Mary?
That's accurate. Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, Marilyn.
Hi. Thank you for all of this. I had a question about 6109. So no further funding. So does that mean, like, I think, was it funding for a certain number of years and so that will stay in place, or is it just 1 year of funding now?
It was just the 1 year of funding. That's all we received initially.
Okay,
And so
that's
I'm gonna
be
let
it.
I'm gonna let the program team talk about, and I don't know if you guys want to do this later on in the agenda about any kind of updates based on that.
My only response, go ahead, Nellie. Yeah, go ahead. You're better. Yeah.
No, Renee, if there was something you wanted, I was just gonna say we have updates a little bit later, so we could do that then. If there was something you wanted to say most specific to that, please go ahead, Renee.
I don't have to say anything now. I can say it later, unless you want me to say it now. Then I'll have to say it again later because I have mental problems.
Let's move to Gretchen.
I would real quickly on that, just note that again, reiterating Mary's comment that this is a proposal. I mean, the legislature could opt to fund it. I will say personally, I think it's highly doubtful, but they could. So just because something's in or not in the governor's budget doesn't mean it will be in the final budget. Marathon.
Hi, Gretchen.
Hi, so this might be a question that's addressed later on too. I'm curious about the 400,000 and that was for expansion. Was that for the expansion that the application?
Well, yeah, I can answer that quickly. So we got $1 million for expansion. As you know, contracts are not executed. So that's actually not a tough hit in that we wouldn't spend that money probably. We're anticipating that to be not spent this year because expanding programs, typically we're going to have 5 months of contract for FY25. So that's 5/12 of a budget, and very typical expanding programs don't spend commensurate to that. It takes a while to hire somebody and all that. So there's a high probability that those expansion, so we have 600 of that. There's a high probability that even the 600 won't be spent. And now that you're talking about, that's part of the problem. We get underspend, right? Because the budget doesn't always align with how dollars go out, or, and we were slow in getting those dollars out in part, well, a lot because of rates. And so I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing that we're able to kind of contribute to this without feeling the pinch super deeply. So,
Well,
Yeah.
I'll make just a friendly amendment or observation rather. I just want to make sure people know that money, if it's swept, it's gone, so it won't go back. And the reason why we did have the expansion start, the money was part of the budget that was adopted in 2023, and it didn't start until 2024. And the strategy was to prevent the underspend, to give a year to plan. So that was an attempt to avoid the underspend. So we'll
Erica, does
continue
that mean
on-
then that our expansion budget is 600K now? Is that
Mhm.
okay?
money's
So
gone.
that is a hit. So that's
Yeah, I believe so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. It also, I know I saw this morning, and just for any LHJ, that the Foundation of Public Health also was a proposed cut there, which is significant.
And if I could make just one comment, and this is just, again, because I know I can make a different comment than my friends at DCYF. I'm going to underscore that the governor's proposed budget that was released, he did two, but by law, he has to propose a balanced budget, which is called a book one budget. They did not make that budget public. That one is bad. So that contains $12 billion of cuts. It's not public. The book two budget was cushioned by the inclusion of the wealth tax. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that inclusion of the wealth tax cushioned cuts, and the legislative conversations are going to be very different. Now, while the legislature is contemplating new revenue, and we won't have a conversation here about whether that's good or bad, the governor, as the one individual, can certainly propose that, but the legislature is 147 individuals. It's a much different conversation. So the conversation and the cuts, I am really bracing for very tough and deep conversations. And I know that the governor's budget that was released publicly does contain reductions, delays that were painful, but if the book one budget had been made public, it would put your hair up, because there just are not a lot of places to cut, that magnitude of funding. So it's dire, just to be real.
I think can be understood that the governor's budget is a high watermark in terms of what we're likely to see for the legislative session. Well, with that good news, if there's no further questions.
Well, Mary and I are just bringing the joy.
I was gonna
Nelly.
I was going to ask one last question. Erica, from an kind of the advocate standpoint, is there something that advocates are focusing on this next session as it relates to home visiting? Is there just curious about that?
Yeah, thanks, Nelly. We are. So we have, I'll put that in the chat too here when I finish chatting. So we've got a one pager put together focused on rates. So we will continue, and actually our friend Samantha Masters here is all set to come and testify at the legislative hearing on the budget that'll likely be the first couple days of the legislative session. So we will continue to talk about rates in partnership with DCYF because it wasn't in the governor's budget. We know that DCYF cannot officially advocate for it, but we will be relying on our partners at DCYF to provide us education and information. And we'll just continue to talk about it. I just want to be realistic that the likelihood of the full 7.8 million will be tricky. But we'll continue to talk about the need and educate. And also, I will just say, because of the reality, our number one priority is protect. I'll put that. Yeah.
A question in regards to the travel. I know that in working with our CSO, that they just froze everything. They froze the hiring and all kinds of things. Do you anticipate? I'm thinking back to 2007 and beyond. Do you think that all travel will be frozen across DCYF and even like our Start Early conference in February? Do you think that there could be a halt before that for those of us who are planning to go?
So I will say it's a little bit, agencies have discretion in how some discretion in how they're implementing the travel freeze in terms of what they deem as essential and what they deem as non-essential. So it's kind of I'm sure there will be guidance forthcoming around what they believe to be, if it's non-essential, then it will be frozen. I don't personally anticipate the travel freeze to be lifted before February. And so I think it's just a conversation of what's essential versus non-essential, and then how, for instance, you mentioned the CSOs. DSHS may have a different understanding of what's essential than DCYF. So different state agencies can kind of make different choices around that. So I don't know how helpful that is, but I think further guidance is likely to come out on specific items.
Chrissy, we haven't gotten any guidance on how this impacts our contractors' travel, but our state, we're not, we're frozen. So we're not able to go to that.
Yeah, and I guess that's, having worked at a college during the previous period here, it just was like across the board. So I've never worked in a nonprofit when something's going through this particular type of scenario. So will you guys then give us advice on that? Okay, thank you.
Once we get guidance on that, for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just to add, DSHS is, we're non-essential staff hiring only, which is really cutting into staffing, and no travel outside of the state. But inside the state, it's case by case based on, the essential nature. Is it grant funded, blah, 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 all that stuff. But it is going to be just a really rough year for the state agencies' participation. And these cut budgets are pretty significant.
Any other questions? And not even questions, thoughts, or things you want to kind of share about, let's say, thank you to Mary and to Erica for such a thorough job getting us prepared for, as prepared as we can be for the unexpected. So at least we're going in armed with information and a better understanding of where things stand. So any other thoughts or questions centered around kind of legislative session? And this is a long session this year, isn't it?
105 days. Erica will probably know when the last day is. I don't know.
April 28th, I believe.
I thought it was gonna be like April 5th. April 28th is rough.
Well, and if you really think they'll get done by April 28th,
I was just gonna say I'm not making any plans until July.
I just wanted to bring into the room, or just ask us all to hold in mind, the families that we're serving, as well as our home visiting workforce, and thinking about them in terms of economic impact of our state's taxation system, and how those losses, like with ECAP and things like that, are probably serving many in our workforce as well. And just think, I just want to put that on the table, because we're talking budget and dollars a lot, but just really to think about what these losses of services mean to our families, and to realize how close to our families our home visitors in particular are in terms of their economic well-being. So it's just, and I know we all know that, but I just feel like bringing them into the room in this conversation, and just wanted to do that in my role as the home visiting workforce specialist. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Nina. All right, doesn't sound like there are any other questions or thoughts centered around this part of our agenda. So again, Erica, Mary, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning and sharing uh, with us. And there'll be more kind of updates and all of those things as we kind of move through and get closer in our end session. So there'll be more updates coming up. So with that, I'm asking if we can project the PowerPoint again. So next part of our agenda is our HVSA fund balance. Okay, next slide, please. All right, as all of you know, Laura has been on family leave here for a little bit. So Renee and I have been filling in this lovely budget section. So we are flexing and growing our budget muscle. So there may be questions that I may not have answers to right off the top of my head as it relates to this, but I am more than happy to take those down and circle back. So please feel free to ask. And if I don't know the answer, I will track it down for you. So again, our 17B is what we call it kind of internally. It's our HVSA account, and it's dedicated to HVSA home visiting funds. And so as you see here on the chart here on the right-hand side, you've seen how our account balance has grown and how we're starting to have things turn to the downside, which we're excited about. And we've done some things to address the growing fund balance, and especially over this last state fiscal year. So we had increased authority to spend, which allowed us to address that. Also workforce appreciation incentives. So that was great to be able to be in a position to support our home visiting staff in that way. We also did a 7% contract adjustment. I know we've been having ongoing discussions about equity in pay and about just how home visiting programs are funded. And so this was a way for us to support that work that we've been doing and also address the account balance. So we had projected earlier when we shared information with you, I believe in June, that our fund balance at the end of state fiscal year 24 would be 1.2. We didn't quite meet that 1.2, but we got pretty close. We are at 1.9 as of July 1, 2024. And the activities I just mentioned were one of the ways that we were able to see that decrease from 2.3 to 1.9. So I'll just pause there really quick if there are any questions about that. And Renee, feel free to jump in if there's something that I missed, or if there's something that you want to add.
I'll have a comment on the next one, Millie.
Sure. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. So as we look at state fiscal year 25, and we know that we are early in that fiscal year, we are anticipating an underspend of 1.2, so it'll be going up slightly, but we expect that to change because there's some activities and some spending that we're still on target to do, depending again on kind of approval and the lift on the spending freeze that we have right now. So expansion 2024, as we plan to have that move on. And I don't know if that was where you wanted to share something, Renee. So I'll pause there so you can cover that.
Well, and I think this kind of leads into where I was going to go with expansion update anyway, is if you all can imagine, we're really in a lot of holding about this, and this state spending freeze puts us in an awkward position with our fund balance. We're not sure we're just not sure what, if we'll get approvals. We've been working on a contract adjustment. That's all stalled. So things are stalled because of this budget news. So I would say we keep just this could go up or could get swept, or if we get allowed to spend, it'll come down. So I think what you're hearing right now is a lot of uncertainty about where we can go with the dollars in the fund balance. So
and I think what Renee is mentioning also covers where we are with Senate Bill 6109. We're also in a holding pattern with that, and we'll have some more kind of specific updates as it pertains to the procurement a little bit later, but that also is impacting our fund balance as well as kind of contract adjustments. And Renee talked about that. We're still kind of working on what the percentage will be. We still have kind of some thoughts about that and working internally with our finance department to determine that. And so that will also impact. And then the rates work, as we've talked kind of through this process and where we are in it, that also impacts. I know that we had allocated some of the fund balance to go towards rates, and that hasn't happened yet as we're still in the process of implementing rates. So we know that that's another place where we'll know more, and it'll impact the fund balance.
I just wanted to say too that the term holding pattern isn't really what we're all sitting around doing, but I just that we're not. But anyway, I kind of felt like that was not the best choice of words, but we're scurrying around, but not accomplishing very much.
Go ahead, Erica.
So I wondered, given okay, so Vicky Ibarra is joining this later.
Yes.
Given the is there a way for her to ask her if there's a way for DCYF leadership to assert a request for protection of this funding so that it just isn't sitting there to be swept? Meaning, would that be an appropriate question to ask of her, given otherwise, if you're frozen on it, it will be gone and there's needs around rates, etc. I might not being clear, but this, I'm assuming part of the money that hasn't gone out was in anticipation of rates, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think an argument could be made that this money shouldn't be swept just so that we could help support some level of a rate increase for providers. Thanks.
And then we've continued to have that conversation internally, Erica, and I don't think it's an appropriate question to ask when Vicky's here, but we are kind of doing some active thinking internally, and I don't know if there was anything you wanted to add to that, Mary, and I see your hand, Cassie. So Cassie, go ahead.
Oh, okay, thanks. I'm realizing that I'm not sure if I understand the vocabulary of this very well, so I might just want to stop and do a little check. Is it safe to say that the account balance is the same thing as underspend, or is the account balance simply the amount of money that is in the account? And so, like, for example, because we're halfway through fiscal year 25, we can assume that a good portion of that 2.1 will go out to programs in the second half of the fiscal year. I'm not sure if I know how to think about that.
Oh,
Renee.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, so what you see on the chart here, Cassie, is project where the account balance would be on June 30th. So it isn't a current snapshot of what it is right now, because you're 100% right. There's a lot of dollars that will go out to program. And then also, there's not a lot of dollars in there right now, like our I-502 deposit may not have been made, or, you know, that kind of thing. So it's what you're seeing here is numbers that aren't real. It's not like what the bank account is right now. I don't have no idea what the bank account is. Our fiscal people know that, and I should know that if I were Laura. Laura knows that, but she probably knows that even though she's on family leave. But this is really a projection of where it would be on June 30th after all the spending and everything else. So
Got it. And then there are additional dollars, McV, TANF, and 502 that are available for reimbursement, but we don't see that included here.
no, because the way McV and TANF work is we incur expenses, much like our LIAs, and then we bill for those expenses. So there's no landing in the account and then accruing at all. It's all back and forth, which is why, like, some programs know I get on their case if they invoice us too late, because then I can't pull that money into the account until they give me their invoices, things like that. So it's in and out, or out and in. It's out and in. So
Yeah, thanks. I just appreciate kind of here's what you're actually looking at. Thank you.
And I really appreciate, Mary, you mentioning that, because that was my understanding as well, that that the $1 million was a one-time only, and that we, because it would be really hard to figure out how to budget for that anyway. So, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah. And so if we included all of the pieces all the other fund sources that you were talking about, this number would go up to account for that. So this is just general funds. Any other questions or thoughts about our fund balance update?
I just wanted to note, since we're talking at the larger fund balance too, and we brought up TANF and I-502 and McV, that our general state funds support those three fund streams significantly. So they are not sufficient for the slot counts that they currently are allocated towards. So GFS is a really super big safety net for those funds. So they're not like, oh, wow, we're getting a huge relief because we're getting our I-502 deposit. I-502 doesn't support the I-502 slot sufficiently because it's just not grown with costs. So just to give you a picture of kind of how it all, and I know that our folks who, you know, like I'm looking at Christy, and you get I-502 and you get GFS, but it's really to support your I-502 money. And so that, I just wanted to make mention of that too, that it's gotten increasingly complicated over time, and we've appreciated the state kind of backfill for those slots. And actually this year, for the first time, we were starting to migrate slots back into GFS and away from those fund sources, because we just were pretty hardline communicating with our funders that if you don't keep pace, you're not going to be able to hold on to those slots. It's this little, we're going to move them into where who's paying for them. And I'm not sure where that's all going to go in the future. So I'll shut up. But I just wanted to make mention that the GFS is a really important part of our funding portfolio.
Thanks for that, Renee. I think it's really important that we keep that in mind. Marilyn, please go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I just want to express, this is really hard. Like, we knew this budget crisis was coming, and as I look at it here, I know in the HVAC, in the previous meetings, we've talked about, struggling with expansion when agencies are having a hard time meeting their budget and paying their staff. And so I know that we're somewhat limited on what we can do, because some of these are legislative decisions. And so I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I just want to bring up that frustration again, that like, if we, okay, we expand some slots, but we're going to lose some slots because people are probably going to have to lay off staff. Like that might be coming for people. I feel like the 6109, like, our fentanyl rates in Yakima and our CPS rates are terrible, but that doesn't, an expansion isn't really going to help us, but it could help us fund staff who are already seeing people. Anyway, I just feel frustrated about that. And as a member, I just feel like I need to say that out loud.
I think you should say it out loud. It is frustrating. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. I feel like this is a year where we're gonna have to kind of hold ourselves, right? I mean, everyone's asking me, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm like, I don't know. We all are gonna, just get through this and use our best wisdom in a tough time. But I think you can't just deny it or make rosy,
No.
lemonade out of it either. So it's just, you got to own it. And I can't say as a program director or an independent, nonprofit agency, what I would be doing. I have my own thoughts about that, but I guess that what we know is that we don't know a lot. And so you have to make decisions based on a lot of unknown, and you have to make those decisions in your positions of authority. We just want to support each other in this time. I don't know if that's helpful or will be.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I mean, I guess I'd want to say too, like, I think, like, I know for PAT and NFP, the soonest we would go to rates, but probably we're not going to go to rates is July, right? That's been the discussion. And my recommendation for HVAC to recommend to DCYF is that decision is made as soon as possible, because, and maybe that's a question, I don't know if we can ask Vicki that, but it's really hard for implementing agencies to make decisions right now if we don't know, are we going to have the same contract amount in July or are we not? And so that would be my recommendation, that is decided as soon as possible, because at least that would be a known.
That's good input. Go ahead, Gretchen.
Hopefully I don't totally stick my foot in my mouth, but give it my best shot. I think it's hard because obviously we're probably not going to know about rates until the end of session, which is, looking pretty late into spring. I mean, unless it's totally done away with or something earlier, I don't know. But I guess my question / concern with it is, if that, given that rate increase, what was it, 7.8 million, I think, was not in the governor's proposed budget. And if that doesn't move forward, what is that? I mean, I assume DCYF is probably having conversations around this, like, what does that look like then? And it just makes me think about, something Marilyn said made me think about going back to, when we were looking at like true cost, getting back at that a while ago. Is there a way to, I don't know. I just hope DCYF can consider like maybe stepping back from rates if it's not moving forward for everybody, and making sure that it is whatever funds are distributed in an equitable way, because I know that there are some programs that have, or some sites just based on the geographical area that have this really big increase, and then there's other sites that they can't even make it work, so they're potentially facing cuts with rates implementation. So I know at one point an administrator from some site in the state in one of the rates call talked about, like, have you considered looking at like what are the costs for each site, and then, you know, having a set amount, like, you know, that we're going to raise everybody by 5% or 10% or whatever it is, just to make sure that it is equal, and we continue to have home visiting throughout the state, that we don't have underserved areas that are, because of whatever region they're looped into, are going to take a harder hit and not be able to make sure that the program is sustainable. So just throwing that out.
Appreciate all the input. And we're going to do this exact same, well, at least have the budget presentation tomorrow afternoon. So all our LIAs get access to the same information at the same time. We don't have answers at this point because obviously we're learning alongside all of you, but appreciate insights and, you know, how to move forward with our dollars. So, and I thought I saw Erica's hand, but then I don't see it anymore. So.
I switched to phone. No, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you, Renee.
Alicia, I see your hand too, and I don't mean to be taking over facilitating this section. So just I'm living in the reality of it though. So partly that's why.
Wanted to bring up that part of this whole rate setting process has been to address some of the inequities in the contracts. And so the idea of just doing an across the board percentage increase honestly gives me massive heartburn again, because I know there's programs, mine included, but I'm definitely not the only one, that are so drastically underfunded. In comparison, I mean, I think everybody's a little underfunded for sure. But doing across the board increases does nothing to address the inequity. So I would encourage that not to be an option. Targeted would probably be better served, and would do, you know, even if we can't get to rates, doing targeted increases may be a better way to do that. I also think that just doing across the board increases kind of lends to the icky feelings that are already in the process. This has been a really hard several years of not knowing what we're doing. And that wears on LIAs, it wears on financial teams. So.
Yeah, we're looking at a lot of different scenarios, Alicia, and certainly the more targeted approach is more considered, because I think we've shared with you part of the reason we went to rates was when you saw that differential across programs, and not wanting to just kind of exacerbate that as we move forward. So trying to figure out what to do with what dollars we have. So. Anybody else have comments or thoughts to share? And like I said, I think it is a hard time, and I think we have to come together and share kind of grief in all of this right now too. So it's not just being silent isn't necessarily the right way. So yeah. I'm not really sure I'm understanding your questions in the chat, Liv, but so.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about, like, I think everybody has kind of expressed around if we could speed up using rates with both the state general funds and the other sources, if that can be a strategy to try to preserve state dollars when they're across the board more vulnerable. So basically what I'm getting at is, if we can use these funds towards rate, will that be more likely that they will be protected? And so having that occur in July is kind of late. It is late to think of any kind of form of protection, which then brings me back to some of the other questions that you guys have been lingering on for a long time, which is, will HRSA or can MCV dollars be used to implement a rate as well? So I'm just kind of saying, like, can we speed it up to protect the resources? And is that a strategy that is on
I'm
the
not
table?
sure the speed of spend is gonna, it's the money that we have and we would just be spending it faster. Go ahead, Nellie. Yeah.
No, and I think there's some of that we have control over, Liv, and some of it that we don't. So so we are making our way through this, working with McVie to figure out if that is an option. But I think that's, it's an HRSA question and a HRSA kind of decision, and there's only so much we can do to help kind of rush that or push that forward. But I think what you're laying out is we are thinking through and trying to figure out the best way to protect what we have, because we know that it's allocated for something, and if it's to shift or to be moved or to be taken away, then that causes a huge deficit in trying to figure out kind of how we're going to fill that. Are we going to be able to fill that? And ultimately all of that trickles down to the LIA level, which is the one thing we don't want to have happen, is have service to families impacted. So we are kind of thinking through and moving through it as quickly as we can with what we kind of have available. And at the same time, I think balancing internal kind of initiatives and processes, as well as kind of the federal pieces, and then thinking through creatively constantly with our fiscal team around how could we best utilize the resources that we have? Where does it make sense to make cuts, and what cuts can we make that don't impact, like we talked about, direct service to families. And so yes, they are. It's an effort to protect, and I think there's some of that we definitely have control and impact over, and some of it that's beyond our sphere of control. Any other thoughts or questions, ideas, concerns as it relates to kind of what we've shared? And I think it's a combination of our legislative update and then kind of where we are with our underspend HVSA fund balance. Again, we are a little bit ahead of schedule, which is, again, not a bad thing. So what we may do is rearrange some of what we have, because we have Vicky's joining us for the conversation around the update to the rates evaluation, and she is scheduled to join us here at 11. About 11:15, because we were going to take a break at 11. So we will move into kind of the updates. Then we've talked a little bit about them, so we'll dive a little bit more kind of into where things are. So we'll move our kind of update portion that was going to happen towards the tail end of the meeting into this space. So giving you kind of a rates update, giving you an expansion update, and an expansion both from general funds and from 6109. Those were. So Jessica, if you want to scroll through the slides, there's not a ton back. Okay, so Renee, do you want to start, and then I can take on a little bit on 6109, and Nina, I'm going to ask for your support too in providing a 6109 update. Right. So hand it off to you, Renee.
Sure. So it doesn't look like I have any slides. I think you all got the updates in the slide deck. And so in a nutshell, what's going on with the GFS expansion? Originally, we were running 2 procurements to spend out $1 million. One was to do a set aside for a startup program, and then the rest was to go towards expanding existing programming. And we were legislatively mandated to do an expansion, even though I completely hear what some of you are saying around needing dollars for sustaining. So those procurements went live in October. We received, they also closed in November. We received a few applications for startup, but none were what we call responsive. They were missing important elements. So we didn't go forward with this startup and moved that 250,000 into expansion. We held our review panel yesterday. We have 3 times as much request for dollars for expansion as we have dollars. So that gives people a little sense of that. It was a very difficult meeting yesterday, and I'm glad to know I didn't have to then reduce it further to 600K. But we're still in process of kind of walking through now how to, the order of that and budgeting. So that announcement will come out in early January after we have a chance to kind of work with individual LIA applicants on their budget proposals if necessary. So that's the plan with expansion. And we're going forward with it, not assuming that the freeze will not impact that. And one of the reasons is because the direction we've gotten is that client service contracts, which these, with a few exceptions, these all apply to, are in that exception category. But that doesn't mean we still have to go through the review process and get the exception. So we're doing that, and that's the plan. And I think as programs learn of whether or not they got funded or not, then we can grapple with, well, what do we do about that? So and so I can't really answer any more about that other than just process. 6109, we issued that, and we got a fair number of applicants. And in the process, our contracts office informed us that you can't run this like a typical application. And we're scurrying around in the fall doing this. Because of the way the money is going to go out the door, it's not considered a direct client service contract because this is holding dollars for slots and not paying for direct services the way we currently do. So Chris Gorgas in our contracts office and I pretty much became contract solicitation crazy people and redid this all in less than a week, reissued the solicitation as a formal solicitation with a much compressed timeline. So we took advantage of the pre-existing application and all the, and our review panel and everything. And so we're basically recycling it into a much more formal process. What that means is that anybody who did apply is going to have to reapply. They're going to have to do the bureaucratic work of registering with DES and filling out some of the forms for doing a competitive procurement. It's not super painful. The application itself, we just transferred all of the questions over to the new format. So if anybody had done that work, you just have to do a cut and paste. I'm probably not supposed to be saying all of this, but the process is being run through the contracts office, which requires a protracted protest time period. So we would actually have been able to sneak it in the existing timeline, but we have to allow for, I think, 2.5 weeks of protest if someone's not funded. What that means is that we have an application deadline of the 10th of January. There's a bidders conference on the 4th or 6th of January. I mean, this is how quick it is. But the materials are released, and they're only released to LIAs. So while it is a public procurement, you're not eligible to apply unless you are a current LIA funded by DCYF to implement one of the 9 home visiting models, and you may only propose to implement the model you're currently funded to do. So all of the exact same things apply. It's just now it's a much more rigorous process. And we will hopefully know by the end of January. And if there's no protest, we'll be able to move forward with contract negotiations. If there are protests, that will delay that. But our timeline is that we would even be able to execute contracts in the first week of February. Again, knowing that there's right now, we don't know. I'm going with Erica's. This is the governor's not proposing 6109 continued funding. We're continuing to move forward because we don't know the final result. And so there's a lot of just uncertainty about it. I wouldn't encourage programs not to apply because of the uncertainty. It's just we are going to be judicious about how we implement if, say, we don't know what's going on with budget after July 1st. So that was probably I'm taking advantage of the fact that we're early to give you way more information than I probably should. So, but I think we let people know, and we're very apologetic about this, but it was kind of something that I was full steam ahead running procurements, and the contracts office was not, I wouldn't have the full weight of their support behind us when we move forward. So.
Renee, is there, I don't know if you can answer this, but if funding does not continue for 6109 for implemented organizations, are we going to be able to then put them into another, if that LAA has an open funding slot in a different, can we, because right now we can't move between funding sources.
Right.
Is there going to be a way that can happen so that we don't have to lose families if at all possible? And is there?
Yeah, for sure. And actually one of the things we're talking about, and I don't want to get out, sometimes I have a tendency to get out ahead, and I probably shouldn't, but the agency has been really working hard on trying to create pathways for family first and being able to draw down funds in home visiting. And 6109 was going to be our pilot process for figuring that out. Those conversations are still going forward. In fact, we are kind of proposing, we had on our schedule before all this budget stuff hit, to spend some of our office hours with programs in January talking about creating referral pathways with child welfare agencies. So the idea there is that we're still very much interested in trying to do that, because we're not drawing down federal funds for Family First. So so that work will continue regardless of 6109. I think that the beauty of 6109 was all of funding specifically for a particular type of family and all of the training supports for home visiting programs, that you're already seeing these families. So that there's a loss there, but it's kind of the agencies, we're moving forward with the work based on the best practice that we know, and then we'll figure out how to make sure that we don't get out in front of a diving pool or try to dive into a pool that's got no water in it. So we're trying to, we're kind of construct those pathways regardless of whether that funding source continues or not. How it affects the intricacies of fund source codes and things like that, we'll figure that out for sure. But we never, ever, ever want families to just be cut off of services, ever. So, yeah. So I would say our typical approach is attrition through people leaving or graduating, not, oh, sorry, you can't make funds available to that family anymore. So. Anybody else have questions? I'm sorry that we don't know more. Like I said, we're just hopefully not plowing forward blindly, but also not stopping, because we don't want, what if the budget comes out and is double 6109 for 25 years? We want to have done some of that work in case, we never know. And we know that that's going to impact implementation timelines if anybody is awarded 6109 funds. And I actually put in a request. I don't know what will happen, to see if we can't use some of that 6109 funds to get everybody safety kits. And so we'll see. I don't know if that, because that came out of the All Age VSA. So is having safety kits for opiate. So we'll see. It's not really home visiting, but it's for families. Well, any other questions? Or like I said, before I get myself into too much trouble, I'll go on mute.
Renee, this is Erica. I'm on the phone, so I'm going to apologize in advance if am I interrupting somebody?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. Thank you. I hate that. Reminds me back of like 2018 when we were all on the phone. Hey, could I have an opportunity to go back to I thought it'd be helpful to provide a little historical context about the expansion and right sizing or true cost conversation. And I want to say I very much hear what programs are saying and very much hear that. And I've been reflecting that this budget situation definitely caught a lot of us by surprise. And we've had a little bit of what's the expression of the sky falling situation, and then the sky doesn't fall and now the sky is falling, right? So the funding that we secured for this expansion that we're talking about now, we were working on this
2 years ago. And just remembering that we secured funding, so that $1 million for expansion was secured in 2023 with a start date of July 1, 2024. But it was also accompanied by, and I'm driving, so I don't remember the amount, but it also was like, it also had additional monies to go to the LIAs. And I want to say it was like $1 million for expansion and like $5 million for LIAs. It was substantially more for LIAs. So it was accompanied by, so it wasn't just a full-on expansion focus. It also had LIA investment. So just know that. And also that there's a lot of legislative focus and importance on serving more families. And I'll just remind folks too that this move to rates is very important to the legislature. They do not, the way that home visiting is funded right now really will harm any ability to grow the program. So I just want to note that as well. But just providing that context that this funding was sought and secured 2 years ago, and it did have quite a bit of additional funding for LAAs as well. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I thought I'd remind folks.
No, you're absolutely right, Erica. I don't remember the amount, and I think you all saw that in we've done actually a series of contract increases in the last couple of years. Knowing that, and I think one of them was just an across the board. I think another one was more targeted. And so just knowing that that money has gone out the door in a non-competitive way. I can't remember how much it was. That's where Alora, she's good on things like that, but for sure. And then this was, again, we were given a year to do planning, and our agency had made the determination that no additional dollars would go out the door without a raise. And so that's kind of how we ended up this little bit of a traffic jam of not having the dollars go out sooner than they did. But yeah, thanks for that, because I think that's 100% true, is that I think advocates in the legislature has gotten the message about it. I think it's and we're just grappling with rates and the true cost. So yeah. Anybody else have any other questions about the 2 expansions that are in play right now? I think these are also, I mean, I think Vicky may have some insights as well, but you know, when she comes on board about some of this, but she may not quite yet either too, because we're all kind of dealing with this new news. So
thanks for that, Renee. I also wanted to give Nina an opportunity just to give you an update on where we are for the training component of 6109.
Thank you, Nellie. Well, we just completed a procurement for a trained entity to provide foundational training for the substance use disorder work that's called out in 6109, as well as just general services for families struggling with substance use disorder, or impacted by, I should say, substance use disorder. And we had 2 finalists, really strong candidates. We've identified somebody as the apparent awardee, and are just on pause now as we await the parameters of the funding freeze and how that impacts this particular procurement. And we have the person the entity that we've chosen and plan to work with has really able to hit the ground running beginning in January. And we anticipate if things move quicker rather than slower, of having trainings starting up in March or April, and that these trainings will really be foundational, not units. Why am my brain just lost the word? But different, like 9 different oh, I'm sorry, my brain just lost that word completely. But the other piece about it is that this both the agencies that we identified have really strong capacity at centering equity and deep understanding of to really operationalize what it means to serve families that have been disproportionately impacted, that represent populations that have been disproportionately impacted over time. And so when we talk about foundational, units, I'm going to call it units because that word is lost. We are talking about from, harm reduction into, physical safety for families and providers, first and foremost in terms of harm reduction, but also doing units that are focused on building relational safety and trust with families, and that cover topics such as bias and stigma attached to substance use, and also understanding this sort of how we're working and collaborating with the child welfare end of programming as well. So and then finally, as we are working, we're working to develop units that are sustainable, that we will have, we could support incoming staff over time, as well as supporting ongoing practices to deepen the capacity of the workforce. And as Renee mentioned, the harm reduction kits are one of the things that folks have been interested in, and also basic resources relative to a lot of the work that's been done to develop materials that are available to our workforce to get that out as well. So hopefully that gives you, excuse me, I just want to say one other thing, and that is accessibility. And because everything is being done remote, we're really looking to develop these accessible units of training that can be available to a broader audience, including full HVSA, not just those that might be receiving the 6109 awards for home visiting services. Any questions or? And the word will come to me immediately when I go on mute, I'm sure.
Thanks for that, Nina. And if that word comes to you, feel free to put it in the chat. Well, we are kind of back on track schedule-wise, which is great. So we're going to take a 15-minute break here in just a little bit. But before we do that, I just wanted to provide some context for the upcoming agenda item, which will be the next steps on the decision around the rates evaluation. So as we had kind of talked about at our last time that we connected, which was in October, our data subcommittee had provided kind of an overview of what they were hoping to do in regards to evaluation, and HVAC had voted on moving forward with that. The next step was to communicate with DCYF leadership, more specifically Vicki, around just sharing the plan and asking to be able to move forward with that. So Vicki has provided a response to that, and we thought it would be great for her to be here in the meeting to share kind of her thought process around her decision. So we did not share out yet the letter because we wanted there to be an opportunity to have a discussion. So just wanted to give you that context as she is kind of coming in. And thank you, Martha. Martha put in the protocol, and I also just wanted to give Martha or Gretchen an opportunity to share a little bit more context before we hop on a break, and then have Vicki join us when we're all back together. So if there's anything you'd like to add, Gretchen or Martha, please feel free to do so.
Thanks, Nellie. I don't see Gretchen off camera, so I'll go ahead and just note that a thanks to both Gretchen and Erica, who submitted the letter of request to DCAYF to promote this work. And also thanks to the team for helping review and put together the protocol for the RBC work. We are still very committed to doing the work, but look forward to hearing from Vicki about what concerns she have and if there is a way forward. So I think we'll hold the rest of our comments until after we've heard from her.
Thank you for that, Martha. So we are going to take a 15-minute break. It's planned to be kind of back together here at, well, it's longer than 15 minutes. We're going to come back together at 11:15. And I believe Vicki will be with us at that time. So we're going to take a break right now, and I'll see all of you here at 11:15. Thank you.
So it's 11:15, welcoming people back from our break. Nellie is multitasking right now from family. Picking her child up from school. So I'm filling in, watching to see if people are back. And then I'm going to introduce Vicki. So I'm seeing some screens come on. I'm here to welcome Vicki Ibarra and to share some updates on what's happening with our evaluation proposal, just by way of context. Vicki has sent a letter to the chairs of the committee that the most HVAC members haven't yet received. We'll follow up this meeting with that, but we wanted her to share her insights onto that. And I know that some folks also may wanting to ask you, Vicki, where we might be heading in this as we navigate the budget storm. So you may have some insights to share. People may be asking you some questions about that as well while you're here. We really appreciate you taking time to be with us and share with us. So I'll give it away to you.
Thanks, Renee. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today with you all right before the holidays, while we all have lots of other things we're trying to wrap up. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm Vicki Ibarra. I'm Assistant Secretary for Partnership Prevention and Services. And Nellie asked me if I would come and talk about the November 4th letter I received from Gretchen and Erica about a potential rates evaluation and my response. So I appreciate the proposal. It was clearly very well thought out and very well done. And I think I would agree that we are very interested in the results of the questions that the evaluation proposed to ask. Questions about the process of implementation of the rates initiative, the potential impact on local implementing agencies, and ultimately the potential impact on families. So I would agree that we are interested in answers to those questions as well. So I appreciated the thought that went into crafting the proposal. After reviewing the proposal and the cover letter that came with it, I responded on the 27th to Gretchen and Erica that we would not be moving forward with it at this time. I did thank them and tell them what I just told you, that we're interested in answers to these questions too. But given that we haven't yet fully implemented rates in the in-home visiting, I felt like it was probably premature to be doing this evaluation, certainly premature to do an outcome evaluation. Additionally, I wanted the opportunity to consider the DOH contractual resources that would be necessary to complete this kind of evaluation, and other demands that there may be on that contract. So what I suggested is that we reevaluate in the spring, and we'll know more then will be further along in implementation and might have an opportunity to think about when might be the best time to do something like this. So happy to answer any other questions, any questions you might have about the proposal or my response or anything else. Martha?
Hi, Vicki. Thanks for coming on and sharing your reasons with the committee. I guess I have, I appreciate the input that the outcome, you know, that part of the evaluation really was set for later on. It was in year 2, and I could even see pushing it back another year. But I think we have a key opportunity right now to look at this from kind of a developmental evaluation process and looking at the input of partners in the development of the rates work and early implementation. I think the development of the rates work could be very informative for us as the HVAC and for DCYF to kind of think about how voices and perspectives are incorporated in designing a new reimbursement process. And I think some of the early implementation information we could garner through the evaluation would be helpful for expansion of the RBC work to NFP and PAT, if, you know, assuming that's still going forward in the spring. So I guess I just would advocate that there are some opportunities that we lose by delaying, because as time passes, people move on to other things and people forget, or, you know, just are too busy to engage later. And I think the opportunity is now to get some feedback about the design process.
Thanks, Martha. I appreciate the feedback. And I appreciate the reference to sort of early implementation. We know from implementation science that there are stages to implementation, and there are opportunities that come with each stage. I would certainly agree with that. So I think maybe I don't disagree with you that early implementation presents its own opportunities for learning, and that those learnings are valuable. I guess I'd like to think about this in a couple of different ways. I mean, I'm a researcher too, and I know that I tend to think anyway about learning in a fairly formal, structured way. We've implemented rate-based contracting with many contract groups, and my hope is that we're not having to conduct a formal evaluation in order to hear from those who've been involved in the process and improve our processes, right? That I think the local implementing agencies in this contract group have been fairly engaged and fairly vocal about their preferences. So I would hope we have an opportunity to hear those things all along the way of implementation. I believe we've made some adjustments. There may be more that need to be made. And we don't necessarily need to conduct a formal evaluation to do that. I can see how a formal evaluation could add value to that process. But it's not as though the choice is either do a formal evaluation or don't hear the voice of those that we are working with. I hope that's not the situation we're in. That said, I do agree with you that early implementation presents its own opportunity. And that would certainly be something that we could talk about in the spring. We'll still be in early implementation in the spring, and that might be the time to bring this up. We just felt like there are so many unknowns right now. We want an opportunity to consider those before we make a commitment here. Thanks. Hi, Nellie. Any other questions I can answer? As I said, related to this proposal or related to anything else? I understand from what Renee said that y'all were talking about budget. It might have some questions there as well.
Nikki, I just wanted to say thank you for your response to the email and letter from Erica and I, and for coming on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Gretchen, for all your work. Well, I know the budget situation, there's still a lot of unknowns. I don't pretend to have all the answers. We're still waiting for our fiscal office to give us a formal evaluation of the governor's budget. As you know, our new secretary, the identity of our new secretary was announced yesterday. So we're considering what that means for us. I think that's good news for many of our prevention programs. We know that Representative Sen has broad knowledge about prevention programs that are operated in the agency. So I think that's good news for those programs. But there's still a lot that's unknown. But through it all, we do know that we share the value of continuity for families, continuity and stability as much as we can for our local implementing agencies. So we will definitely have that forefront in our mind as we consider the decisions that need to be made over the next few months as we go into legislative session.
Were there any, I thought there were some specific questions around the budget. I just unfortunately did not jot them down. I should have, but I don't know if anybody remembers exactly what they were. I think I remember, I don't know if you're still on, Erica, but I think you had a specific question. She might not be on anymore. So if anybody remembers what they were, please feel free to unmute and ask. But if they come up later, I'm happy to the person to reach out and share those with Vicky and have responses sent back out. But I do remember two specific. I remember there being two questions. I just don't remember what they were, unfortunately.
Nellie, I'm trying to remember Maryland's. I don't know if Maryland's back on, but I think it was around 6109.
Mm-hmm.
So did we talk about that as a response? I mean, I think we do have some information about 6109.
So we did share that it wasn't in the, as of right now, it's not in the budget. We did share that. We also did share that we are on hold for contracts for both. We shared the need to reprocure for the service contracts for 6109 and did share that we have a preferred potential vendor for the training, but a lot of that is on hold right now with the spending freeze, and we're hoping that that will shift here, and when that shifts, then we'll be kind of geared up and ready to go. So we are going to go through with the service procurement and go through and do the same thing that we were kind of in the process of doing before that needed to shift, and then we will be on hold or pause until we hear more about our ability to move forward with those contracts.
Thanks, I don't know that I can add a lot to that. That sounds very thorough. We do now have a freeze exception process we have to go through for contracts and hiring. I think that I'm still learning what happened to the 6109 funding in the other areas of the agency. I believe it probably all was not included in the governor's budget, but I want to verify that before I talk with my colleague assistant secretaries. So to some, that might look like, well, if it's not included starting July 1st, we should just not do those things. I think 6109 is about child safety, and I think there's value in learning that can come out of going through with the procurement. So I'd like to see us consider doing that in all areas that we're funded. And we have a couple of other spots inside DCYF where we're we're going to see funding go out or not. There were early learning slots. There were public health nurse interventions with local jurisdictions that we had identified in high need areas. And yeah, we're not guaranteed that that money will be picked up, but it was opioid settlement dollars. It was not straight up state dollars. So I still hold out some hope that someone may realize that and put them back in the budget. They were 2 years worth of funding is what was in what we were told was in the budget before. So I still have hope that we might see that in one budget or another on July 1st. And given the impact on child safety, I really would like to see us find a way to move those forward.
Well, Vicki, I really appreciate you taking the time to come and connect with us and to share kind of your decision and the reasoning behind your decision, and being available to answer questions and to kind of hear responses to that. Are there any other questions for Vicki? Any other thoughts you wanted to share? Again, Vicki, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Is there
Sure.
any last thoughts or anything else you'd like to share with the committee?
No, just to thank you all for your work and the support you provide to children and families and communities every day. Happy to be with you. Nellie, thanks for the invitation, and we'll look forward to future discussions. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye, Vicki. Okay. So we have been super efficient with time today. I don't know kind of I don't know why that has been, but we have been able to make it through all of our, there's just the rates update. Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. We have one more update, and then we'll talk through, I think I think we were initially scheduled to have our subcommittee meeting for data, but I think there's some questions there, some thoughts there, so we'll do that. But with the rates update, we wanted to share with you was around, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, about McV. So where we are with that kind of request. So we've been able to pull together the narrative. We are making our way through kind of finalization and then vetting of the slot rate, both for NFP and for PAT. So we are close with that, and as well as working through a variety of different scenarios. So we're close to being ready to submit that packet. There's also been our finance team contracted with a consultant to do some research and talking to states who have used McV in rates, either to support part of their rates, or there's also been rates in FFPSA. So there's some research that individual is completing at this point, and that report should be due to us by the end of this year, definitely by the beginning of January. So there's some pieces that we're still pulling together to finalize that request to McV. We've also been in consistent contact with McV to help kind of us tailor kind of what we need to. We've requested some technical assistance ongoing from them to help us kind of support our fiscal team in being able to understand of how the rate what needs to be included in the rate. So we're still making our way through that as far as the McV side, and all of the things I talked about in regards to kind of finalizing the rate and vetting also supports our kind of general funds portion of the rates process. So we're still making our way through. Some of this is unfortunately going to slow down a little bit as a result of the governor's budget. And as Vicki mentioned, just needing to analyze for DCYF kind of what that means and where we need to be making some changes or some shifts where we need to either be looking at a change in the way that we're utilizing the funds, or looking at some reduction. So all of that is being done by the same fiscal team that's supporting all of the rates work. So right now we're seeing some competition and time right now, but we're continuing to move forward on the program side with what we can to prepare. Once we're done kind of getting our information from the fiscal team, we should be ready to go. So that's a really quick rates update, but we did not want to get into the end of 2024 without sharing kind of where we are in this process. We've also continued to support the models that moved into a rate structure in July. And so we're continuing to do that. We've gone through our first kind of round of invoices. So that's also brought some learning as well. So that we continue to learn in that respect as we prepare for PAT and NFP. So I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to add, Renee. So just wanted to give you a chance there. And then open up for any questions that anybody may have.
Well, no, and it doesn't look like there are any rates folks currently on the call, but like you said, we've been having monthly meetings with our folks on rates just to kind of walk through how to do this and how to learn and how to report and all of that. And we plan on continuing to, now that we're starting to really do it, we're planning on just continuing to have regular kind of group-wide check-ins on that as we all learn together going forward. So there's still a lot to be really figured out at DCYF on how we're administering this. And we're using our LAAs to help us with that.
And Renee, what kind of documentation are you guys doing to kind of record those discussions and the input provided and the action taken and things like that?
Well, we're not actually formally documenting. We're running webinars, and we just don't have the staffing to really do what you're asking for. So I kind of understand why you're asking. So, I mean, one thing we might want to talk about, Martha, is if one of your team wants to sit in on some of these meetings and do that documentation. So I think what we have is slide decks, and a lot of this happens kind of in one-on-ones as well. So with TA, yeah. So.
Any other questions? Okay. All right. Okay. Oh, look at that. I forgot all kinds of updates. I need to back into them. So also wanted to talk a little bit about the chair and co-chair structure. So we had a vote the last time that we met, which was in October. So I just wanted to start off by apologizing a little bit for how that whole process worked out. I think it was the first time that we were kind of working through that, and there were definitely some things that I did not kind of think about or consider ahead of time. And so it was a little bit choppy. And I think there's some of the individuals who were nominated on the call now. I think there are some who are not here, but just wanted to take an opportunity to apologize if anybody felt put on the spot or kind of uncomfortable in that whole process, because it was a little bit choppy, it was a little bit rough. So I just want to take an opportunity to acknowledge that did not go as smoothly as it could have. And if that the intent was good, the impact may have been different. So if the impact to you as somebody who was nominated, or the impact to you as somebody who was part of the meeting did not land positively, I definitely want to take the time to apologize for that. I also, at the end of kind of our conversation there, committed to contacting and reaching out to each of the individuals who were nominated, because I think there were a couple of people who mentioned it just not being a good fit and timing right now for them. So I did reach out via email. I need to follow back up to schedule some time to meet with each of the individuals who were nominated, just to kind of talk through. There were some questions around commitment. There was some commitment in regards to time, some questions around support. So I want to be able to talk to those individuals on a one-on-one basis, just to be able to share of here's what we're looking at, here's what we're thinking about, and then also be able to hear what their thoughts and ideas are as well. So I am committing to have that process completed before we meet again, which is in February. And then be able to come to that February meeting with where we are. My hope is that we'll have a chair and co-chair identified at that point, and we'll be able to start talking through kind of what the rest of our HVAC meetings for, it's going to span to state fiscal years, but for the rest of 2025 would look like, and we can start tackling some of the things that we've been identifying as wanting to move forward on. So the values conversation, conversation around kind of current membership, conversation around terms of members and things along those lines. Any questions or additional thoughts about the chair co-chair structure? Okay. Jessica, could you push the next slide? Okay. Just want to make sure there isn't another update that I forgot to account for as we're making our way through today. So that's it for our kind of main meeting. So just wanted to take an opportunity to ask if there's anything, any kind of thoughts, any questions about each of the topic areas that we've had today that either has struck you or that you forgot to ask or anything, just wanted to give a couple of minutes for that. Okay. So I have a question to ask around the data subcommittee. But before I do that, I just wanted to take an opportunity to say thank you all for your kind of commitment to HVAC and commitment to making the meetings, being at the meetings, being engaged. I know it's a definite commitment of time. It's a significant portion of your day that could be spent doing other things. So really appreciate that you're here, appreciate that you participate, appreciate the challenging conversations that we've had over this last year. I'll just talk about it from the calendar year perspective. There's been a lot of things that we have talked about that have definitely not been easy. I have appreciated the times where you have pushed back and asked us as an agency to think through things, or has asked us as an agency to take other things into consideration. Hoping that we'll continue to have a relationship that is like, because I think that is the only way that we grow, the only way that we are able to kind of see things in a holistic way and have all perspectives represented. I hope is that as you're going into the end of 2024, that you take time to think about all the accomplishments that you've made, both personally and professionally. I hope that you get to spend the rest of this year with those who are near and dear to you and doing something that rejuvenates you, and that you start 2025 in a good place, in a healthy place, in a good space and surrounded by those you would love to be surrounded with as you kind of head into 2025. I know that people are probably sitting with Vicki's kind of decision, and as you process that and sort through that, and feel free to reach out to the co-chairs of data, the data committee, and that's Martha and Gretchen. Also feel free to reach out to me as well if there are thoughts that you have, questions that you have, or things that you would love for us to take into consideration. And by us, I mean kind of DCYF. So I know the data committee, there's a request for you to stay on, and you can just stay on to this main meeting. I think Gretchen and Martha just want to check in with you about kind of how you're going to spend the rest of your time. I know we're early, ending a little bit earlier than we anticipated. So hopefully that this gift of time is also one that you can kind of spend to help get caught up or do whatever you kind of need to on this Thursday, this Thursday morning. With that, I just again want to open up for any last minute thoughts, questions, concerns, anything that you want to share. And then ask that those of you who are not part of the data committee, you can feel free to log off. And
If I could
Emily,
actually
just
make
remind. Yes, go ahead. I saw your chat.
I was just
And
gonna
then,
say,
yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, before you hop off, please fill out the reflection survey. I just put that link in the chat. That really helps with planning and figuring out what works well about HVAC meetings, what you would like to see differently. We've been having kind of less and less feedback on the survey. So again, I know you guys are all busy, but please, since we're finishing a little early, if you could take the time to complete the survey now. If and Nellie, we only want HVAC members to complete the survey, correct?
I had a thought about that earlier today, Emily, and I think it's great to hear from everybody. Sorry, I know we had gone back and forth on that, but yeah, it'd be great.
Okay.
If we could all
So
fill it out, it'd be great. Thank you.
Perfect. And there should be the option to select what type of attendee you are. So if you're trio, just select trio, and if you're a member, and so on. Thank you.
Nellie, I just want to give a big shout out to you and Renee, and thank you for creating a safe space that we could voice our concerns and opinions and thoughts around heavy topics around budgets. So thank you.
All right. So if we could just take as she mentioned, take a couple of minutes before you move on to the next part of your day to fill out the survey, that would be great. And again, Gretchen, thank you so much for those kind words. I appreciate it. So happy end to 2024. Fantastic beginning to 2025. And data subcommittee members, please stay on for a couple minutes to chat with Gretchen and Martha.
Thank you, Nellie.